Hi nerds! This is Katie from Homo Librariensis. Thanks for coming to check out my channel. This is my nonfiction November wrap up. I made a TBR for this and I followed pretty much none of it. I don't think my books meet any of the specific prompts. I just read what I felt like reading, but I did read some nonfiction, so it fits. I had said I was planning to read the Ellen DeGeneres book I had that I got free from a garage sale. And I read the first 10 pages and it was just, I guess I was expecting a little bit of a memoir, but it was actually more like one of those sort of cheesy 90s anecdotal kind of quote unquote funny books, but it was not funny and it was awful. It was awful. So I have already given that away. That was a DNF, and that's fine. Maybe someone else will enjoy it. And then I said I was going to read Bastard Tongues, and I started it. I got, I don't know, maybe about a quarter of the way through, and I do plan on keeping reading it, but all my other books I ended up kind of spur of the moment getting them out of the library, and I had to read those faster. So this one I'll keep plugging away at. I do enjoy it. I love reading about Creoles. That's what this book is about. It's about kind of this, it's written by, I think, an old white British dude who started researching Creoles sort of back when the field was quite new and people weren't really putting a lot of time and effort into researching them. And yeah, this is how he did his research and came up with different theories and the theories of the time of how Creoles develop. I've only just started in. I'm always a little bit wary of reading white British old dude academics, just because that's the perspective that we've always gotten, and so. But it's actually not too bad. His life seems interesting, but more when I actually finish that. So those are the ones I said I was going to read, plus a few others, and I didn't finish either of them. But I did read 3 nonfiction books in November, which is pretty good for me. I have almost finished The Fact of a Body by Alexandria Marzano-Lesnevich, but I'll wrap that up another time. The ones I finished Policing Black Lives by Robin Maynard, and so I had started this one a long time ago, and then I downloaded it from the library and I had to return it, and then I put myself back on the list, and then I finally got it back in November, so it was perfect, and I finished it this time. Wow, this one was such a good book because it is, I think it must be her dissertation for her PhD or something similar, because it's written very much like a dissertation, and so it includes a lot of source material, so it's very well researched, and it is basically a book that outlines all the different ways that institutional racism affects Black people in Canada. And so most of what we hear, I think, in Canada is about racism towards Black people in the United States, and we don't get a lot of perspective on where that stands here, and I think that lets us kind of get away with believing that that's not a problem here. And while I think research has shown that the bigger, quote unquote, like the bigger issue is racism towards Indigenous people, there definitely is institutional racism towards Black people here in Canada. And she went from the time of slavery in Canada, which we did do, to the time of slavery abolishment in Canada, where people were still, there was still segregation and Black people were still treated poorly, and our government definitely had plans to try to discourage Black people from immigrating to Canada all the way up until present day, and basically, like I said, different institutions. So it breaks down the effect of racism in the education institution in Canada, the effect of racism in healthcare in Canada, the effect of racism in the prison industrial complex in Canada. So excellently researched and written book. It's definitely not a story by any means. It's written to be a piece of information, but it is well written. So I recommend that one if you have any interest in that. The other 2 books I read were both sort of medical, so they'll probably show up in medical lists later, medical books. But I read When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi. I have a copy of this. I actually have a copy. I rarely have physical books, so I forgot I had this one. But this is, I got it for $2 at a library book sale. So, When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi. This one went around a couple years ago, and it was extremely popular, and I can see why. It's written by a man who was dying, found out he was dying of metastatic lung cancer in the last year of his residency for neurosurgery. And so it's basically his memoir knowing that he will probably pass away, and him sort of working through that. The first half of the book is how he got to how medicine became what he was passionate about and how he got to that. And then the second half is post-diagnosis. I mean, it's a little bit interwoven, but basically that's what it is. And I think the hype is well earned. It is well written. He is a good storyteller. And just the way that he wrestles with these questions, like, what do you do with your life when you don't know how much time you have left, but you know that it is limited. I mean, we all know that our time is limited, but I think we all have not all, a lot of us have sort of the luxury of believing that we're working with 70 to 100 years. And whether that does us good or not, it's hard to say, but we do have that. And he is dealing with the question of what do you do with your life when you might only have a few months to live? And he kind of is grappling with anywhere from a few months to 10 years. And so that's a big question for him. What do you do with your life when you don't know how much time you have left, but you know it's somewhere between months and years? And so you have to kind of decide what is important and how to live the days that you have. Also, it just seems like he's an incredibly strong person to continue to do everything that he did while being treated for metastatic cancer. So definitely recommend. It's there's a reason for the hype, and it is well written. It's a pretty quick read too. So the next book was a totally different tone, even though it was sort of medical focused, a medical memoir, and that is This Is Going to Hurt: Secret Diaries of a Junior Doctor by Adam Kay. So it really is, they say, taken from diary entries or journal entries that he wrote while he was going through his, I think, possibly medical school and residency. The terms that they use, he lives in Britain, and so the terms they use are a little bit different than here in Canada. So I'm not always sure when he's actually a resident and when he's in medical school, but he is hilarious. Like, it is irreverent and uncomfortable. He chooses to go through through his residency in OBGYN, or OBGYN, obstetrics basically, so delivering babies and dealing with gynecological conditions. So some of it is very graphic, and that stuff doesn't really bother me, but even I was a little bit squeamish for a few of them. That's not the area I work in a hospital with ill people, but I don't work in that area. And so I will say it was, for some people, it would probably be hard to read. It was just so funny. He's so funny and quick-witted, and a big part of it, so even though it's funny, a big part of his message seems to be just what it's like to go through residency through the NHS, and how poorly paid they are, and the amount of work that they're required to do, and the stress that's related to it, and the fact that there are so few resources available, or at least this was in the early 2000s, few resources available for mental health for resident doctors, and kind of the shame of that, and just how broken the system is. So while it's very funny, it has a serious point, and the ending is quite, you should definitely read it. It was good. So that's what I read. I haven't been updating very much, and I know that's just because I don't have a lot of time at home where there's light, which this is as good as it gets. It's the middle of the day, but it's snowing outside, and our only windows face north. So, and then I've recently become newly obsessed with embroidery. I'll show you what I've been working on. So I am embroidering a nipple, and it is taking a long time. This is for, there's a meme that someone sent me that says, I'll show you, that says how lesbians have sex, and then in here, there's supposed to be cats, but I haven't embroidered them yet because I'm a little bit nervous to screw them up. And I mean, I changed the meme a bit because it wasn't very inclusive. I made the bodies a little bit more, I don't know, just a little more variety in there. But I have a party to go to, a big holiday party next week, and they do this like massive gift exchange where everyone brings something either homemade or free or regifted or cheap, and they do a huge gift exchange that takes hours and hours, and people can steal gifts and all that kind of stuff. So last year was my first time attending this party, and we brought a gift, but we didn't really know what to expect. And this year I really wanted something that people might fight over, so I don't know. I hope it's inclusive. I tried to include different body types and different body shapes and gender presentations, and I feel like since it's just going to be cats, i.e. pussies, then it sort of stays away from any transphobia, because that can represent any genitalia that someone identifies as a pussy. So I think it'll be fine. I hope it turns out well. It's definitely my first big project. I've only done a few really small things so far, so this is just me kind of winging it. But I'm having fun doing it. So that's what I've been doing instead of making videos. I'm still getting a lot of reading done. I'm just not getting a lot of videos done. So I'm going to do another one probably next week about all the other fiction that I read, and then what's coming up at the end of the year. So thank you so much for checking in. I'd love to hear how your nonfiction November went. So if you made a video, let me know and I'll check it out. And I hope everyone's it's December 1st when I'm filming this, so I hope everyone's having a great holiday season. Thanks for checking in. Bye, guys.